Welcome to the second session under the Health, Bio, and Life Sciences track, titled South Dakota, How Talent is Solving Today's Challenges. My name is Mark Brown, and I'm the president and CEO of the USD Discovery District. So just to give you a little bit more about my background, I've spent about 20 years in the pharmaceutical industry in positions ranging from scientist in the early years to a vice president for research and development and entrepreneur. And during that same time, I served as a professor of molecular oncology and as the head for global health and health disparities at Colorado State University, and as a molecular oncologist at Colorado State's Cancer Center. So over the course of my career, I've worked with quite a few recent graduates coming into the biosciences workforce, and I've always had recent graduates, both at the undergraduate level all the way up to the ranks of PhD, involved in my development of a range of therapeutics for colorectal cancers, breast cancers, lung cancers, a whole host of infectious diseases. And so workforce development is very much a passion of mine. Now, over the course of my career, I've also learned a lot about the challenges of workforce development, particularly in the pharmaceutical and bioscience industries. And I know that today's panelists have developed a range of innovative ways of engaging students and interns to help build our future workforce. In fact, they're all well known for being champions and innovators of workforce development. So today's speakers include Billy Struffert, who is Assistant Vice Provost for Student Success and Engagement at Augustana University, Dr. Ron Eutectis, who is the Chief Science Officer at Alumond, LLC, and who also served as a professor at South Dakota State University, and Dr. Inga Bretson, who was a professor of biomedical engineering and the Vice President for Research and Sponsored Programs at the University of South Dakota. So before we get started, just a few housekeeping tips. Let's hold all the questions until the end. We'll have at least 15 minutes for questions once our panelists conclude. And for our online participants, you should see a chat feature on your screen. So please feel free to send any questions that you have that, as you think of them, and we'll address all of those at the end. The goals for this session: appreciate the attributes and skills Generation Z brings to our community and organizations, learn some of the best practices used to help determine the right talent fit for your organization, learn how our secondary educational partners are developing pathways for future entrepreneurs to find success in South Dakota, and consider how organizations are securing their intellectual property while managing interns and other early career professionals. So before our presenters, we have a short video for you from the Sioux Falls Development Foundation called The Future of STEM.
Well, welcome. It's so nice to be with you guys today.
Call this a formula for workforce development success. The Sioux Falls Development Foundation and Poet teamed up recently to provide a memorable lesson for Brandon Valley sixth graders.
This is a great opportunity for us to talk about careers in science, particularly chemical engineers, which we're in such short supply of.
We have sustainable energy that can provide to a lot of different companies and organizations and sources.
We're seeing more and more that we need to get in front of students at a younger age just to expose them to all the different opportunities that they have, in the different fields, but also to stay in South Dakota.
Poet engineers helped put this program together, detailing what the company's work involves and what careers can be built there.
I think it's great for Poet to get their message out there. So biofuels are something that we produce here in the Midwest and are great for the environment. Renewable and cheaper in the gas tank. So if we can get messages like that out to students at the same time that we share with them that, hey, there's career opportunities here in South Dakota, it's going to be a big deal.
Engineering and science and operations sometimes might sound a little bit intimidating, but these are fun careers that they can jump right into after school and even start pursuing classes now that lean towards these different areas.
People like Poet process engineer Dallas Harder helped personalize the message.
Growing up, I didn't think I was going to be a chemical engineer. I wanted to be a NASCAR driver, and then I wanted to be an author, and then I wanted to be a professional a musician, and then just kind of at the end of my high school career, I was like, okay, let's be an engineer and let's go to South Dakota School of Mines.
He says a program like this would have had an enormous effect on him.
If I would have had this growing up, this would have changed where I went. Just being able to kind of learn what they kind of do, because when you hear engineering, you're thinking, okay, someone that builds things, someone who's good with math, good with their hands, and that's part of it, but that's not the whole thing.
Then it was time for hands-on learning.
We got like a mixture of 4 different things that represented something, and we had to separate it as best we could in a limited amount of time.
So there was like beads and water and oil and glitter, and each of those kind of represented something from our process. So we explained to them that as a chemical engineer, part of our job is to separate the items that we have in our facility into high quality products that we can sell to the consumer.
Students divided into groups and assumed roles similar to a real-world business team.
I was team captain today, and I kind of ran the group and decided how everything went, but they had different roles too.
I was the project manager, so I just kind of looked over everything, gave some suggestions on what we should do. I was the scientist and researcher, so I got to like design the process that we got to go through and then help kind of facilitate it and make sure everyone was doing what they're supposed to. I had to keep track of time for everyone and tell them like how much time we had left and if we needed to like do it faster or if we could keep going at the rate we were going. We took the beads and put them through the strainer, and then we put them in their finishing container, and then we took the water and the glitter mixture and we put it over a coffee filter, and then we put the rest of the glitter that we got in the coffee filter into the finishing container. And then we didn't really know how to separate the water and the oil, so we were running out of time, so we just kind of divided the solution in half and called it good.
I thought it was really fun to work with the group, to be able to have different roles and work on one challenge together and be able to succeed in the end.
Winning groups were chosen and students presented to the class how they tackled the project. Staff said the program's structure was ideal for learning.
The introduction, telling them what POET does, showing them what POET does, and then giving them the opportunity to experience it hands-on. It was such a well laid out presentation. I was very impressed with what they put together today.
And it definitely made a positive impression on the students.
I learned how different ethanol and gasoline were from each other, and when they were burned, gasoline left like a black soot and ethanol stayed clean, and that showed me how POET uses it like to create clean air.
POET's really cool and that they might have good job opportunities in the future. I learned that what POET does is really good, how they like create better ways to fuel things and get cleaner air.
The Brandon Valley activity is just part of a larger Development Foundation program called Your Future STEM that's partnering with industry and education to engage students with STEM-related careers. It's already tackled construction and architecture, now biofuels, and healthcare is next.
This is a huge priority because we know that we have to start earlier. So we're starting in 6th and 7th and 8th grade. We're coming in with skill development, career exposure, as well as aligning to their curriculum. That's how we're going to help them and guide them through high school and into college about what we need to see finally in industry.
The Development Foundation being able to provide these opportunities is such a unique opportunity, and I'm thankful that our school district allows those opportunities to happen.
So cool. That's the kind of stuff that gets me excited. With that, I'll hand it over to Billy Struffert, again, Assistant Vice Provost for Student Success and Engagement at Augustana University. And Billy, if you don't mind just giving a little bit more about your bio before you get started.
Perfect. I am Billy Struffert, and I serve as the Assistant Vice Provost at Augustana University. And I am here today because of Workforce Partnerships. More than 15 years ago, and I think you stop counting after 15 years, but more than 15 years ago, I was in the Twin Cities, and my partner and I wanted to come back to Sioux Falls. We grew up in Northwest Iowa, didn't frequent this, it wasn't a popular destination growing up, but we had heard great things about Sioux Falls. yet we had a failed job search. We both were first-generation college graduates, had progressive parents who were community leaders, but not professionally networked. However, my partner, Dan, who had just graduated from the U of M with a master's in HR, stumbled onto the Sioux Falls recruiting co-op, the website, and was introduced to a wonderful person we all know as Mary Medema. And just that morning, she had been meeting with Jan Mathieson she was out at the Eros Data Center at the time, and she was looking for somebody in HR. That is a good testimony to events like this. We are force multipliers. Working together, we can transform our community. The video certainly illuminated that. I especially appreciated the video because it showed what can happen if we all work together. That educational systems brought the students, employers brought the dynamic example that engaged students, and the city of Sioux Falls hosted that with Denise. So I'm excited to continue. I represent the post-secondary institutions. I'm excited to continue to amplify the good work that you all are engaged in. The very fact that you are here, whether you are in person or online, is a testament to your dedication. And in fact, in addition to questions, we also welcome ideas and input. This is a place for thoughtful exchange, so at the end, if you have a best practice yourself, feel free to share it. For those of you who are online, feel free to post it in the chat. We learn from and with each other. And I can also thank Wendy and Katie. They, in the last session, if you joined us, they set the stage very nicely. Poet, for instance, talked about their scholarship program, which is one of the exemplary practices that I'm going to start with. So my content really, as I have connected with you all and seen the good work, I'm going to elevate some of those best practices that I know have engaged students and connected them early with your organizations, and then also illuminate more the shadow side, some of the frustrations that perhaps students are navigating. But scholarships is one piece, as Katie alluded to when she showcased Poet. And Poet is not alone. If your organization is not thinking about total rewards, you may want to. Your competition is. And it does not have to be large. Even $500 for the entire year can cover books for students. So think about that. That is very common for many post-secondary institutions, not just Augustana. And I know, by the way, we have some post-secondary institutions like me online. You also are welcome to chime in with input too. As the video alluded, the on-ramp starts early. And students have many competing priorities. They have at least 40 to 50 hours of study class time on top of co-curricular activities. We are encouraging them to volunteer, and I can't applaud employers enough for leveraging volunteer programs. For some of your organizations, I know volunteering is not centralized with HR. If that's the case for your organization, you may want to reach across the aisle because it can be a game changer. So I'm going to elevate Sanford as an example of this best practice. If I have a student who is thinking about healthcare and physical therapy, Sanford's volunteer program is in many ways an internship for those students. For as little as 3 to 4 hours a week, they can get exposure to both inpatient and outpatient, and we have seen that yield patient care positions or internships. So that can be a great benchmark that you could consider. Campus clubs are equally important for two reasons. One, knowing you all want engaged employees, it's a phenomenal litmus test. If they are serving as a president or a vice president of a campus club, I guarantee you they likely are going to be the leader when it comes time to employ, for them to launch their careers. So look for that on their resumes. Don't dismiss it as fluff. It truly does signal that they are engaged. Second, campus clubs are a place for case competition, and this is increasing, especially with nationally large organizations. Think about a case scenario, a common challenge. If you frame that as a case competition, and it could be something you either share with an academic club throughout the city, it doesn't necessarily have to exclusively be Augustana, or even an academic class, you're going to get a good work sample. And that could be the applicant pool you advance as finalists. Especially we're seeing IT organizations are doing that to select their applicant pool for internships. And students, even if they're not selected, we're satisfied because they're getting engaged and they're applying theory to practice through that case scenario. And we've seen some of that even citywide. Many of your hiring managers are serving as alumni mentors. So if you haven't, for instance, in your podcasts or blogs or strategic communication, encourage your hiring managers who are doing that to integrate seamlessly some of the hiring practices or the recruitment cycle that you have. Do that. We bring more than 50 alums into our first year seminars, for instance, and all of the freshmen are required to attend. We also have an alumni mentor program for juniors where they are paired up individually with an alum in their chosen field 5 times over the fall semester. So that's another great way to just organically, naturally source talent and have that alum be an ambassador for your organization. So if you haven't equipped them with sound bites, good next step. Marketing of part-time jobs, I guess the key thing I will tell you, 2 best practices, do the work for students. It's not that they necessarily are lazy and not reading job descriptions. Some of them lack occupational literacy. They just don't know the labor market and can't translate how that job relates to their major. So Lifescape, for instance, has a handout that says jobs for psychology majors. They've illuminated and translated that in a way the student can understand conceptually. NEDRED Omnitech actually showcases the job description as a resume so the student knows the jobs, the way those skills relate to the position they aspire to get down the road. So that's a great way to frame an internship position. Job sharing, if you really, really struggle to find talent for mission-critical positions and they currently are only full-time, think about converting them to a job share with 2 part-time positions. That's not only could capture college students who don't have the capacity to work full-time but are an educated workforce, as well as on-core career. You could capture some retired people too. We've seen that especially with healthcare and mission-critical patient care positions. I don't have a lot of time to go into CPT or OPT, but please know international students are eligible to work in the US with no fee or paperwork. So if you want to hire an international student for an internship, all they need is an offer letter, which you're going to issue anyway. They also are eligible to work for a year or 2, depending on the position, with no fee. The only real thing to be mindful of is taxes are slightly different, but can't emphasize enough there are no fees to hire those. And they're the most talented, the best and brightest of their country. So it's a great way to diversify your workforce. I'm going to spend more time talking about internships, knowing that is certainly a great on-ramp and pipeline for future talent. Many positions, of course, have converted virtual, and we are grateful for that. Nationally, in August, 60% of all internships have resumed. We've seen more with summer. It seems like some employers here in Sioux Falls, the spring hasn't completely returned. Oops, oh no. Did I go? I'm going the wrong way again. Give me one. Oh, do we not have my slides? Oh, well, my slides didn't come through. Okay, well, I'm going to talk about micro-internships. You can't see the slide, but which is why Augustana is focused on micro-internships. So knowing the spring hasn't completely rebounded, we are anticipating that it will occur in phases. And if you're not familiar with micro-internships, they are just smaller, bite-sized. So a typical internship is 120 hours for a 3-credit experience. Most institutions, it's 40 hours for a single credit. So if you do the math, typically an internship is 3 credits. But a micro-internship could be a 20-hour project. Think about that project you put on the back burner that right now you don't have the capacity for. That could be framed as a micro-internship. Micro-internships are especially helpful. You're going to broaden the applicant pool for really busy students. Think about student athletes, for instance. They could fit these into their schedule. Or second, think of low-income students who cannot afford to quit a paid permanent job for an unpaid temporary internship. So this is also something we need to do from a matter of diversity and access. We are right now, you can connect with us and we will seamlessly help you think about and conceptualize project-based internships, but micro-internships are a great way to think in more detail. And with that, I'm going to turn it over now to the next slide.
So thanks so much, Billy. We'll go ahead and hand it over to Dr. Inga Bretson. And again, Dr. Inga Bretson, if you don't mind providing a little bit more about your bio before you go into your presentation.
All right, we'll see how this goes. We need microphones If I get too long, just push this away from you, okay? Thank you, Mark. I'm Inga Bretson. I'm the Vice President for Research at the University of South Dakota. It's a position that I've had for about 8, 9 months, something like that, since December 2019. But I've been with USD for about 15 years. I took an unusual path to get to academia. It's a path that's kind of the inverse of the path that Ron might share, where after graduate school, I was there's no way I'm ever going to go into academia sort of person. I thought it was the weirdest place there could possibly be in the world. I wanted to go into small business. I've always been an entrepreneur. One of the first businesses I created was harvesting night crawlers and selling them to Lewis Drug when I was about 10 or 12 years old. I had a good connection with George Fredericton, who's one of the founders of Lewis Drug. He had a big garden out where I grew up at, and he let me control when I watered certain parts of the garden so I could properly harvest the night crawlers. And I marketed them through there at 8 cents a night crawlers or 96 cents a dozen. And on a good rainy night, about 40 or 50 dozen night crawlers. We would try to use innovative techniques like cattle prods to encourage them to come out of the ground on a good wet night. And then when your sister wants to hone in on that opportunity, you don't point out to her the importance of wearing rubber-soled shoes when you're near the cattle prod. And then they don't participate in the activity so much afterwards. So maybe they didn't always practice the best business practices, but it helped me keep the market share in the night crawler business. But I've always been an entrepreneur. So after graduate school, I took a position in and I grew up here in Sioux Falls, obviously, since I worked with George Fredericton. I did my undergraduate work at Augie. I went to pretty much every school I went to, it seems like it's closed. Mark Twain's no longer Mark Twain. Lowell is still there. The Hayward Elementary that I went to was across the street from the tank farm, and that's been torn down. Axtell Park's not the same Axtell Park that it was. Oh, okay. Washington High School is not the same Washington High School, and Augustana used to be a college, and now it's a university. So they close after I leave or something like that. But after graduate school, I took a position with a small business in Fargo, North Dakota. I've always liked to say, like the small businesses, it was a very early stage startup company. I learned lots of things not to do there. After about 6 or 7 years, we were back in town, and I ran into an old friend and started chatting with him, and his father and his dad, who was the director of the Avera Research Institute, asked if I'd ever thought about moving back to Sioux Falls. And that was a great opportunity that we had. And so came back and I worked with Avera for a year, and that's when I got to know Ron Eutectis. He was starting some endeavors with some of the researchers there. USD brought me in after about a year at Avera to lead one of their governor's research centers, which was really a university technology development. So try to, again, encourage entrepreneurship to grow the tech-based economy in the state of South Dakota. After about a year or so with the university, I realized that they didn't have the right program, so I started a biomedical engineering department at USD. That was the first engineering department they've had there in nearly 100 years. That program has grown. It started as a graduate-only program. We didn't have a building. If you didn't know, the university is based in Vermilion, but I kind of wanted to stay in Sioux Falls, and so we built a new building for that, and it's out at the Community College for Sioux Falls site now. And that's given me an opportunity to grow things in academia. So I get to be an entrepreneur even in the academic environment, which makes my wife a little bit happier because the more steady paycheck than with the small startup company is also a good thing. But along the way, I think we've created a really nice ecosystem at the Gear Center that I'm going to try to transition out into the broader university. When you look at the biomedical engineering students that we've had, we've got 6 companies that have started up either while students were graduate students or within a couple of years afterwards. I think we've had 5 that have placed in the Governor's Giant Vision Business Plan competition. Probably our biggest success would be Sue Lancaster, who is with Prairie Aquatech up in Volga, South Dakota. I think they've just been working on building a $20 million facility up there. And so, several of our students have been very successful in what we're doing. So that's what I'm trying to do here, is create that that entrepreneurial ecosystem. The initial focus is going to be in the med tech, biomed space, which is a growing space that we have here in the region. It's something that the state is very interested in and the city is very interested in. And so some of the things I'm going to talk about are the workforce development opportunities, or the workforce development activities that we're doing at USD to try to prepare that workforce to support these emerging companies in this biotech space. We've got POET that has a long established track record. Alumin's been at it for quite a few years as well. But most of our biotech, medtech companies are new. And so we need that entrepreneurial mindset, and that's what we're trying to create here at USD. Oops, which goes backwards? The green one goes. This one, there we go. Yeah, I've got a PhD, by the way. And so that the ecosystem that we're trying to create is a place that encourages the positive attitudes of people. And by that I mean I want students to focus on the things that they can control. What leads to a lot of the negativity is when people aren't doing what you want them to do, and people just need to learn to accept that you can't make idiots do the things you want them to do. It's against the law to use shock collars and those sorts of things. You have to just accept that's going to happen. I can be in control of the things that I want to do. That's kind of a key step to developing that positive mindset, that positive attitude that folks have. The creative mindset is also a very important one to develop. One of the things that I find myself, I was very excited to see the video that kicked this off, because that was really focusing on the discovery process. I think too much in our K through 12 system, we focused on science and STEM as being much more fact-based, and science and STEM is really about discovery, and it's that creative process of discovery. And I love a quote that Steve Jobs made, that creativity is just connecting things. It's not that hard, complex process. It's seeing all the different things that are out there. And so having this broad base that you get from a liberal arts education at a place like University of South Dakota lets you see all those different islands, and the creative person can start to connect those things together. And we want to encourage that creativity and connectiveness that happens in entrepreneurism. Communication is also a key thing. One of the things that we do at USD is we have an opportunity for students to participate in what's known as the 3-minute thesis. If you're familiar with graduate school, you're doing your PhD or your master's degree, you're going to write a book that's hundreds of pages long, and they are incredibly boring. Nobody reads them but the person that's writing them. Your committee members will lie to you and tell you that they read them, but they read a little bit of it, and you hope that your mom reads it. That's kind of the audience that you have in terms of your dissertation. And the 3-minute thesis teaches students to be effective communicators by distilling that couple 100-page document down to 3 minutes, and focusing on talking with people, not digging into the nitty-gritty of the science, which excites the scientist, but rather be able to communicate with that broad base of folks, whether it be investors, policymakers, news media. All those things are key folks to work with as you're developing your creative skill set and becoming an entrepreneur. We also try to develop ways to get people to be intrinsically motivated. There's the two ends of the spectrum of motivation, intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. That can be getting people to be intrinsically motivated in academia is a challenge, because the hallmark of extrinsic motivation is the grade. And so you see lots of students, particularly, you just see lots of students that enter into every field, STEM is one of them, that are really driven by the grade they're going to get. And intrinsic motivation tends to pop up when people find themselves very competent in what they're doing, know how to relate what they're doing with that bigger picture. So stepping back to Steve Jobs' comment on creativity is just connecting things. That connectedness is part of the relatedness of one another, and then having autonomy to do what you want to do. And so we try to create an environment where people can discover and experiment. You're not just reading a book and regurgitating what was in the book. You're discovering what's in that book, and more importantly, what new things emerge because of what was in the book. And then perhaps most importantly from an entrepreneurial perspective is learning from failure, and recognizing that failure doesn't mean you failed. You learned something new. I think Edison made some comment about how many 10,000 swings in making a light bulb, and it was as though he had 9,999 lessons to get to the one that actually worked. And that's the mindset that needs to pop in. And that last point really competes oftentimes with the positive attitude side of things. So trying to counterbalance those things and empowering the students with that is what we like to do, at least in the biomedical engineering department. Like I say, try to spread that more broadly across the campus. And then that kind of leads the discussion to a program that we started. It actually just spun up this summer. Not that phone off though. It's called the Technology Readiness Acceleration Center. In academia, we've got faculty who are brilliant researchers, and academia trains you to discover and disclose those inventions. But in academia, that's the carrot that you get, is you made this discovery. You got to get your publication, and that's the currency of academia. We don't teach people how to develop. And so that's where the Technology Readiness Acceleration Center comes in, is we're trying to use, we want to use this center as a means to develop entrepreneurs that can take those discoveries that happen in academia and ultimately translate them out into meaningful technologies. Biotech is going to be our initial focus here with the track program, but the emphasis is really on development. And so the students that are enrolled in this program, it's a 2-year program. The first semester, and we've got our first cohort that's going through this, they learn some proven tools for how do you go from a discovery to identifying what is the potential market for that discovery, what are the key missing pieces to determine whether or not that discovery can actually fill that market niche. And so that is that initial technology development piece that is so critical for them. The goal of the track program, while we position this, we just got some funding from the Economic Development Administration for this program. We obviously want to create businesses that the students, when they graduate, part of their second year, they've got to be approaching investors, whether it's a federal funding agency or a local angel investor, to generate revenue for their technology. So in the ideal world, a student will graduate from the track program with their own startup company. And we've got, let's say, some history of having done that at USD with some of the graduate students. I said we've had 6 or so that have started companies coming out of the program. That's what we want to try to formalize what's been happening over the few years. But even if those companies fail, there's going to be a high failure rate. You know, I figure if I hit 2 out of 10, that's pretty good. It's probably more 1 out of 10 on a good day, but I don't tell my boss that. So is this being recorded? That could be bad. But that's all right. But we're going to be creating that workforce that can go to the poets, the Alumens, and start their own companies. Because when you look at these emerging companies and even established companies that are developing new products, you need to have that entrepreneurial drive. You need to know what the market needs, what's missing, how can I take this great idea that I had and develop it into a technology that's going to serve a real need. I say our initial focus is in the healthcare space because that's what we do here in Sioux Falls. We've got a lot of we happen to have 2 healthcare systems. They're very influential. We've got a lot of great ideas that are happening in those systems that we're partnering with Sanford as part of the track program to develop some of those things, and then also have these students starting new ventures. And so that's what we're doing at USD to try to create that workforce that's going to fill this emerging space that we have here in Sioux Falls. And I think that sets me up for Ron.
So we started with Billy in the academic world, and then with Dan, sort of a blend of academia and industry. And we'll follow up then with Dr. Eutectis, again, Chief Science Officer of Alument LLC, who is purely in the industry side.
Well, almost purely within the industry side. Like Dan said, our paths have crossed, kind of been mirror images of each other. So a little bit about myself. I was born, grew up in northeast Nebraska, not terribly far from here. Got my degrees in Iowa, and after I got out of graduate school, really looking for that idyllic lifestyle. Thought, you know, a small college, 4-year college would be great. Went to Dickinson State at that point in time. First year teaching was great. Fall of the second year, I had an epiphany. If I didn't do something else, I'd be saying exactly the same thing every fall, every spring for the rest of my life. So I decided that I needed to move. South Dakota State was reinvigorating a chemistry program that had not had any faculty or students for a number of years. And applied there, got the position, and started in 1988 there at South Dakota State. Now, really, there is something to be said that we are flyover country. I think there's a lot of value to here, but it's hard to get grants. I think we have been behind behind the curve in getting those. So what we did was look for alternative funding sources. And I probably always had an entrepreneurial bent a bit, but that started to look better and better. I said, well, we can go for SBIR money, we can go for venture capital, angel money, and fund our research that way. So that's really the way I started out looking for an entrepreneurial activity that would fit my particular interest. And again, that was in the biomedical field. So started my first company back in about 1990, and we survived being just a small entity, surviving on research grants, angel investment, and the like. Being more of an academic for a while and kind of drifting over to the other side. In about 2008, our timing was impeccable, not really. We decided that we should start a company that would take this technology through FDA approval and finally to a product. Well, of course, 2008 was the downturn, so we formed our first company really focused on product at that point in time. Got into clinical trials, human clinical trials in 2012. At that point, I left the university. I can give you a little history of our company here. So first off, I always like to start with the mission statement. Alumin's mission is to set the standard of care with new clinical therapies based on research and development of novel chemistries. That probably tips my hand that I'm a chemist at heart. But that's what we do. We want to bring new products, of course, to underserved markets. And how we do that is we have a small but effective multidisciplinary team of physiologists and chemists who have expertise in the various fields necessary and required to advance an idea from concept to product. So really, we have the academic side, the training side over here. I'm in some ways a customer and a partner of people like Augustana USD. We've hired people from Augustana, we've hired people from USD, as well as obviously other schools. They have all been great in our endeavors, but what I want to do here is share a bit about what we expect, especially with new talent, and how we're going to leverage that and help them grow. So I want to go through a little bit about the medical product development, just so everybody knows where we are. We start with basic research. That is, we have an idea of what we might want to do. And usually this is grounded in science. This is going to be really cool science. We don't know what we can really apply it to. So to go back a number of years, what has brought us down, and you'll see the medical product that is in clinical trials in the next slide, but we looked at how we might get funding other than typical NIH or NSF funding. And we found that the Department of Defense had a commercial side to everything they were doing. And at the time, they were looking at lasers that would shoot airplanes and satellites out of the sky, and they were looking for a commercial application for that. Now, there's really no commercial application to shoot things out of the sky, but we said, well, with the advances in lasers, how can we use that? How can we leverage that energy to really build a medical product? And so we started with that idea and started to look at the chemistry that would be, available to us. And so once we had the basic science perhaps a bit under wraps, not completely by any means, we started into product development. And what we knew that if we could link proteins, we could do a myriad of things in the body. It was just a matter of where the market would allow us to go, what were underserved needs. And so after product development, we get into non-clinical studies. That's where you go into animals, prove that it works, prove that it's safe. All that has to be done under rigorous conditions before you finally probably get to what everybody thinks is the capstone experience, that is the clinical trials, where we take this idea that we had very early in basic research, have moved it through product development, proved it to be safe, and move it into something that's going to help patients. And then finally, we get to product marketing. Now, we could break these down into a lot more granular steps, but this will do. For Elument, our power alley, where we want to operate, is from the initial ideas up to clinical studies, maybe putting our toe into it a bit, but we really want to operate on that side of the spectrum. Then, from our business perspective, we'll form a new company and put our technology into that new company and look for external investment. Avera would be funding everything up to that point, but now we're going out looking for traditional venture capital and the like. That NewCo would take us through clinical studies, whether that means phase 2 or phase 3, really depends on the product and the appetite of that product by the established medical companies. So eventually, those products then go to industry. Somebody like Johnson & Johnson or Medtronic would be targets that we would attempt to sell the products that we develop to. So that's how we've positioned ourselves. That's where we're going to plug our workforce into. So I'd like to just introduce really the first technology that we developed with really an idea for commercialization. And we spun off a couple of years ago a subsidiary of Elument called Elucent. And they have the license to work in the field of PAD, peripheral arterial disease. It's claudication of the arteries in the periphery, usually the legs. It's very much like coronary artery disease, but it gets a lot less attention. And we had a product, our small group brought this to clinical trials first, but to bring it all the way through the FDA trials, we formed Elucent. They have a wonderful team. But to show you the product, I'm going to use the video that's on their website. So I'm hoping that clicking here, no. Is there a way maybe that you could click on that website, and if the link works, it's going to take us to a movie. Is that something you can do?
He's working on it, yeah.
Okay.
The Elucent NBS Vessel Restoration System is a peripheral artery disease therapy designed to create a natural vascular scaffold and provide durable vessel patency without the use of implants. Elucent NBS is designed as an all-in-one integrated procedural system that combines standard angioplasty techniques with photoactivated extracellular matrix protein linking. The NBS photoactivable small molecule compound is delivered to the diseased arterial wall. The NBS small molecule compound quickly diffuses into and through the arterial wall. Then, the NBS light fiber is inserted in the treatment area to enable photoactivation. The NBS light source photoactivates the small molecule compound diffused within the tissue. This creates extracellular matrix protein linking within the vessel wall's native collagen and elastin. When the vessel restoration procedure is complete, no foreign material is left behind. Elucent NBS is designed to create a natural vascular scaffold that restores the lumen and provides durable vessel patency, all to help physicians reduce PAD reinterventions and improve patient quality of life.
Okay, so that was the instructional movie, I guess, from Elucent. And just to back up a little bit, like I said, it's claudication in the leg. Stents don't work well there. Drug-coated balloons don't work well there. They work great in the heart. So what we've done is a completely new paradigm that we've come in and have developed a product. Okay? I think it's been exciting for all of the people that we've worked with over the years. We've lost a few people as they've moved on to greener pastures. We've trained them. And all of that, I think, is part of the natural workforce development that we have. Talk a bit more about that. But really, what do we expect when we have somebody coming in? What is the product that we'll be getting from USD or Augie going to expect from us? Well, the first thing is we do have some expectations of new employees. And we do want them to come out with technical proficiency. And really, we have kind of a dual phase here. They have to be able to do the task at hand, but they also have to have that inquisitive mind. And a couple of things that we've found with students that come in is there has to be some candor surrounding their skills. We understand that a student coming out fresh from college or possibly even from secondary education is not going to have a lot of experience. But we need to have that communicated to us. The most successful candidates will say, yeah, I'm interested in HPLC. I ran one once in a lab, don't know much else about it. Can you help me learn? And that, of course, is a yes. But we need to know that when we hire them so that we can put them into the best position. A willingness to learn those new skills is obviously important. Perhaps one of the things that we've struggled with, a bit anyway, is the respect for the corporate culture. So as we go and we hire people that may have come from a competitor, may have come from someone else, or right out of college, they have a background. Well, I did this. Maybe it's in an internship. They learned a way to do something, and it may not be completely aligned with the way we do it. And as a new employee, love to hear about their experience, but we're not going to implement something right away just because somebody has seen it before and maybe it was even successful. But they're going to have to build a little bit of, trust, confidence, and experience before they start to influence our culture to change something that we've done and has been successful for us. There's also respect or embracing the mission. I started this out with a mission statement that we're all about helping patients. And we come in every day thinking, how can we advance the technology towards that final goal of helping a patient? We've had people that have come in, great technical aspects to them. They understand what they're doing in the field, but they don't embrace the mission. They're there for a paycheck, not to help the patient. It just doesn't put the fire in the belly that is really necessary to move their work forward. Confidentiality is important because we realize that new people that are coming into our company, they're going to know all our secrets, good and bad. And if they leave for greener pastures, we hope that we've identified and helped them grow a skill set that's going to be very useful for them. But we also do expect that they will take our technology and our trade secrets and keep that confidential. And I think when we were planning this, we talked a bit about it, and that's something that as Augie prepares their students for an internship experience, they really start to build in these ideas of respect for the culture, embracing the vision, confidentiality, and we certainly appreciate that. And finally, the attitude. That really ties it all together. I can do this, a positive attitude is really what we need, and I think it's what all employers need. Flexibility. You come into a company like ours, and what we're doing the day we interview you may not be what we do the day that you start. And so there's going to be a lot of flexibility that we require. It's not going to be like working for 3M, where you could literally come into a lab and do more or less the same thing your entire career, but rather we're going to go the way the science and the product development pushes us. And finally, we really need that cross-disciplinary interest. We said we're an integrated group of chemists and physiologists. The best chemist is going to have an appreciation for the physiology for this to work, and the physiologist is going to have to understand the chemistry that we have to wade through to get to a product. So the more we have that cross-disciplinary training, whether it's in formal coursework, whether it's in internships, or whether it's just in the lunch sessions or going out for pizza after class, is really what we need in the students that come in. Now, we do realize and embrace that this is really a two-way street. As we expect things of our new employees, we also have things that we want to give to our new employees. And so, what does Alument have to do? Well, the first thing, and I think one of the more important ones, is truly professional development. And that comes from several different aspects. It's mentoring. Some of us have been around for a lot more years than we would like to admit. As Dan was talking, I realized the number of years that we've been here in Sioux Falls working together. And a lot of experience there, and we can mentor the students, and most of the people in our group, in our company, are good mentors and really take new employees under their wings. Technical training, we like to send our students out either for short courses or company events that will give them more technical knowledge as they move forward. Finally, we're going to give them experience, and we hope that that experience then comes with a long and successful career for us. But even if it doesn't, what we need to give students, new employees, is really the skills, the experience that they can go out and work anywhere and contribute. And so we encourage them to build a network and really to expand that skill set. So that's kind of what we want to do. I think we've been successful with a lot of people. We've had some people come in and I would say have been less than successful. And primarily it's going to be because of this respect for the corporate culture and embracing the mission. If employees don't do that, whether they're new graduates or old, it's just not going to work out well for them or for us. So I think that the micro internships that Augie is doing really is exciting to me, because whether we employ those people long time or not, we really can see how they fit here. We can commit to them 40 hours, a small project. Even if we're not a great fit, we can make it work. And then they can come back for more if we find out that it's a good fit, move things forward. So with that, I'd like to turn it back to Mark. And
thanks, Ron, and thanks to all the panelists. Not sure how we're doing the mic out for the audience, so I'll be prepared to take this out. Any questions or comments, or as Billy said, suggestions, best practices you have for our panel? Oh, okay. Okay, we've also got some questions from our online audience. So a few that I was considering, you know, Billy, over the course of your career, I'm sure you've worked with lots of students who have struggled to find their way in their career paths, and others who have launched right into their careers and really quickly become known as sort of rising stars in their organizations. So have you noticed any commonalities among the students that you've worked with that have been able to quickly launch into those careers and become those rising stars?
Nate, is similar to what we've already discussed as far as taking risks early in one's career. Pop culture tends to showcase that good vocational decision making is taking a career test, and the heavens part and a unicorn jumps out with pixie dust and you suddenly know what you're supposed to do with your life. But we all know it's far more complex than that, and it involves dipping your toe in the water and seeking out challenging positions, having a positive attitude, knowing that you may fail. So transcending things like even job shadows, those are effective, but really only a glimpse. It does start with things like volunteering, doing a micro internship, engaging in internships, and we're grateful for all those opportunities that you provide, because yes, it helps them better understand themselves and their options, gain robust skills, and connect with all of you.
Thanks, Billy. And then a question for Ron and Dan. You've both had such successful careers in science. You know, when you think back to your high school and college days, now you got to think back a little bit there, but can you identify some factors that led to your decisions to go down a science career track?
Really, for me, it was always, I was going to go down a science track, and it was always going to be chemistry. There was really never a choice in my mind. But I think if I fast forward to my college days, of what really cemented me in that vision was the extracurriculars that we did at the time. It was a bit different back then than it is now. And going out after labs with faculty members, pizza, beer, things like that, that really got us to understand how chemistry worked, what the career possibilities were. I think that's kind of evolved now into more formal internships and more formal programs. But that type of interaction is most important. And when I look at students or any employee that might be coming our way, those that have been involved in the science clubs, those that have been involved in maybe being a TA, and have really immersed themselves in the college experience, focused on the sciences or focused on their major, I think are going to be the ones that are most successful.
Thanks. Dan?
I've always been more focused on discovery. I'm a chemist. That's where my PhD is. But what probably formed me the most would have been in high school and illegal drag racing.
We need to talk.
Oh, we got into quite a bit of trouble, but we stayed out of quite a bit of trouble as well. Again, growing up here in town and just trying to find ways to make cars go faster. The benefits of big blocks versus small blocks, nitrous oxide, and I never did get arrested, but we did. It was also just kind of a different time. We had, again, I grew up here in Sioux Falls. We cruised the loop and all those things, and there was when in high school, and we raced quite a bit locally. But there was a kid that came up from Sioux City that wanted to race. He had a really nice Camaro. We had a Ford Mustang that we had built up. And the police knew that there was going to be a race happening that night. Just this kid was up from Sioux City, and they tracked us down on the loop as they were able to do. And Southeastern Avenue was just being constructed at that time. And so there weren't the houses built up along Southeastern between 26th and 41st Street that there is now. And so the cops took us out there, and they parked one cop car down on 26th Street and the other one at 41st Street and said, "You guys just do what you're going to do." And there we go. But it was how to make a car go faster. It was really kind of drove me into science. And I probably started off at Augie as a biology major, but that class was at 8 o'clock in the morning. I could never make that one, so I failed that one. It's not a very illustrious story. They almost kicked me out of Augie, and then they almost kicked me out of graduate school, but I was the worst student there is, so.
Yeah, we've got a question over here.
I just want to know how you work through the issues of students that expect to graduate and go out into the working world at a $60,000 to $70,000 salary, when it might often be a $30,000 to $35,000 salary. They get the best experience, but they don't get paid as much. They have to be patient. How do you deal with those students?
Thank you, Lon. Excellent question. And one that we are mindful of as a post-secondary institution, and I would even say broadly as a statewide association. Students, the question to me is situated in a context will vary based on their background. Sometimes it's simply a misconception where students just, again, lack occupational literacy and haven't leaned in and done market research. And certainly we will educate them, not only when they're preparing to negotiate salary, and in many ways we don't really even encourage graduates to negotiate salary because they don't really have a lot of experience to leverage per se. Some may, but the vast majority do not. So yes, just situating in that context of it's not really unrealistic, like a sense of entitlement. It's just an unawareness. This is where, again, pop culture does us no favors. I mean, they set the stage and communicate that, that's an expectation. We have done surveys, and I will tell you that mindset is not as pervasive as you would think. So we set the range with our we have a mandatory 1-credit course that first-year students complete. Sometimes, especially non-dominant students, first-generation students, for instance, may even set the bar lower. Women, in particular, may, especially students who have imposter syndrome, may set it lower. So it's not necessarily across the board. But yes, and that's where I would say to employers, I mean, it takes a partnership with that. So I know some employers pre-qualify people as a part of the first interview, the screening interview, for instance. But we, and I would even say for all my post-secondary colleagues on the call, engage in some of that education as a part of their internship. That's the nice thing about a credit-bearing internship is you can fold that right into the curriculum.
And at least looking at, as when I was chair of biomedical engineering, I encourage entrepreneurship, which means you're going to be broke. And that's the opportunity that most of the students have as well at that juncture, because you're not married, you don't have kids, you don't have a mortgage. That's the time when you can kind of swing for the fences and it doesn't hurt you. And so that's kind of the message that I'm at least giving to the graduate students from day one that you're walking in. I tell them that right now you're young and dumb, and that's great, and take advantage of it. Because that's when you can start these things. Once you've got a couple of kids and a mortgage, it's a much riskier time.
That was a great question, and unfortunately we're out of time today, but I think all of our contact information is up on the site. If you have any questions for us, whether you're online or here in the audience, please don't hesitate to reach out to us as a group or individually. Happy to answer any other questions you have about this. I just want to take a moment again to thank our panelists, thank our